Lapse the steering wheel here. Give me the steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on. Whoa.
Your leg, my please. Your leg.
How the f*** is this possible?
I'm driving like a grandma. Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me? From the radio. The rest of the race. Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close him down and kill him. We've got a lunatic on the track down the hang straight.
Annoyed.
Hello and welcome back inside the park. Nice, Paul. Nice trophy. Welcome back inside the Park for Mayfair podcast number 886. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know what we do on race weekends.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's always what we do. But before talking about that race, I have to actually go find a professional race car driver and the sporting manager of the Heart of Racing Aston Martin team in IMSA, who had a busy weekend. You know who this is.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, you know, contrary to popular belief, Silverstone isn't the only airfield / race car racetrack out there. You had a long, busy weekend at Sebring, did you not?
Yes, we did. Only a stone's throw away from what was happening in Formula One world, right?
Yeah, you could probably almost smell the tire and rubber burning from Miami.
Certainly could. Yeah, it was. Sebring, great track. I like it better than Silverstone. So anyway, it was a busy. We got 3 cars racing in the SRO, and in the end, it ended up being a pretty successful weekend.
Double podium.
Yeah, double podiums. Actually, triple podiums, quite honestly. Yeah, double podium in the last race of the weekend. But yeah, we got 4 podiums this weekend, and all the cars are now in their 3 prospective championships are second in each championship.
Nice.
So. Yeah, it's as you know, sports car racing has this whole BOP thing and everything, and our car wasn't the fastest out there. Maybe it was the 3rd or 4th fastest car. But as we always say in the pre-race meetings, it's not, you know, you don't have to have the fastest car, but we've got a great powerful lineup when you've got dual drivers in the thing, and you know we win the race by our combination of team and driver combos. Then maybe even if the car isn't the fastest, and that kind of played out. You know, we're hunting for a championship, and so we're
How
still
cool is that
right
to be
in it.
Second in every championship you have.
Yeah, it's still pretty good. Yeah, I mean,
cool.
yeah, I mean, you know, it's our motto is to try and finish every race. If you can't finish second, finish third. You know, just stay in the hunt.
Yeah.
And if the car isn't the fastest car out there, then let's try and figure out a way of getting it as high up there. And I think we kind of overachieved where the car was this weekend. And so everyone went away pretty happy, even though you always want to win. But I think we maximized what we had. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good job.
Hot down there in Florida. Hot everywhere.
That's what it seemed like at the Grand Prix in Miami. It seemed pretty hot. A lot of the cars struggling for that. The track changed a bit since its inception, since the first race. I think it is delivering better racing these days than it did that first year. Not sure if it was all down to the heat or the tarmac. Certainly a lot of the teams were struggling with degradation and grip, including Red Bull, I might add, this weekend. It was interesting given the limited practice due to the sprint race this weekend, but after watching the sprint and then the real race, I'm not 100% convinced in my mind that the sprint race format as is a really good entertainment vehicle for F1.
No.
I think the race was far better than the sprint. And I know there's a lot of people who love the sprint, and even Sky Sports, they love it, and that's great. And I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy on this, but I just believe the format needs tweaking. Something needs to change. It's just not,
or it not existing at all.
or not existing would be good with me. Not a big.
I know, they speculate, how are you going to make it? And then people talk about reserve drive. I'm fine with having a sprint race at the end of the season and throwing all the reserve drivers in it and letting them have it at it at Abu Dhabi, after the championship's over. But it's just it's a bit more of an annoyance than it is an excitement for me, anyway.
Kind of.
But for fans, I guess if you're at the track, it's you get to see a race in 2 days. So maybe that's what they want. That's what they get.
Maybe, but there's support races, and my gosh, I feel like you couldn't turn around with bumping into either social media or the feed with the Formula Academy, and then that was prevalent, everywhere as a support race, and then I watched some of the Porsche race on YouTube. I think is support race.
Yeah.
And then I saw another race. Was it the Porsche Fanatec where your boy Spencer won that?
Yeah, that was us at Sebring. Yep.
It's Sebring.
Yeah, Spencer won that race. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Porsche? Yeah.
He was driving a Porsche, and he's driving for us next week at Laguna. So he'll be back in the heart of racing at Laguna. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if he was still going to do some more stints with you guys or not. So that was good.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my. I'll stop grousing.
Yeah, it's like, I know it's old school, but I think, it's all the build up to the big event. But when you have an event like that right before it, I don't know. It just doesn't, as you say, there's support races. There's other things to do. It's like, hey, they're at the Super Bowl for a week before they play that game. But what if they played, like a half court, game the day before? Would you? What does that mean to you? I don't know. I sometimes it's nice to have a slow build up to something super important, and when it's kind of a distraction in a way.
Yeah, the way that Formula One is now, it's the sprint races are typically pretty straightforward in how they're going to finish, and I feel it kind of deflates Sunday's race a little bit. Whereas if you juxtapose that with MotoGP. I mean, anything can happen in MotoGP. In the sprint race, you have Maverick, winning over the weekend. And where did he come from, right? So it's kind of like Formula One doesn't have that dynamic ability to see that sort of radical.
Yeah. And they've already added enough races to the calendar. You know what I'm saying? It's like
there's 24.
There's a whole different thing within a team building up for a race versus a practice, a qualifying. Yeah. And so on a team, it's a whole different dynamic and stress, quite honestly.
Right.
And one probably don't really want, I would say, if you're within a Formula One team, but that's what's dictated. I just don't want any more. Just stop adding them.
I know.
If you're going to do it, I think for whatever, I don't know, rotate them around the different tracks if we have to do it. But let's just not get to the point where we're adding sprints to every race of the year. It's ridiculous.
Or give out poles for qualifying.
Yeah, something.
Or points, And also, it wasn't lost on me that the race, if I'm honest, seemed quite a bit more muted this year than in past years with all the pageantry, celebs, people, paddock and traffics, and all of that.
I didn't catch any of that, but tend to try and avoid it anyway. But
pretty lucky because even Martin's grid walk, which you remember the first year, I mean, you couldn't turn around on the grid, with all of the celebrities and everybody just jammed on there. And this year he had to scramble around just trying to find anybody to talk to, which in my mind, I enjoyed that a lot better. I guess Miami probably figured out that they couldn't out Vegas, so why try? So I thought it was a much more like a race and less like
let's make the cars and the drivers the stars rather than the audience.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's jump into the review. We'll talk about how they finished a huge win for Lando Norris, P1 in his McLaren, Oscar Piastri in P13. Lando made the most of the serious upgrade package that McLaren brought, and you could even see that back on Friday. Unfortunately, Oscar only about 50% of those upgrades. Lando had the full package. Oscar will have the full package coming in Imola in 2 weeks' time, but he set a serious marker down in SQ2. that had everybody's attention. Is like, whoa, that is some serious pace setting the fastest lap.
Yeah.
He got robbed in the sprint race, unfortunately, so we didn't see that capability in the sprint race, so nobody really knew going into Sunday what kind of pace they may have. He made up for it on Sunday, though, and while I think, look, you have to admit that he benefited from the safety car. There's no doubt about that. But I would say that his strategy and pace were definitely heading for a P2, P3 result regardless. So a podium was absolutely in the cards. But even at the restart, though, Lando had terrific pace that Max could not match. Max said that Lando was just flying. I couldn't match it. There's no way. What was also interesting is that the safety car, Paul, picked up Max and not Lando. So they had an error, and this gave Lando the ability to come around and get that free stop, right? But like I said, regardless, I think he had the pace to at least podium, and I would argue even possibly have a sniff at the win, even without that free stop. But a bit odd to see the safety car pick up Max and not the leader. Yeah,
not really acceptable, I would say. I don't know what they said on the Sky feed, but on our feed, they were like, oh, well, they're used to picking up Max, so it's reasonable that they would make that mistake, but it's completely unreasonable that they would make that mistake.
Yeah.
I think they were very lucky that Lando probably was the right guy to win the race. He had the pace, and I don't think the safety car error actually made a difference to where he was going to come out of the pit lane, just judging by where the gap was and the pace that he had. Even if he shuffled out and came second, I still think at a restart he would have handled Max. I think the combination of Norris and the McLaren were the rightful winners of the race. So I think they dodged a bullet there, but they need to go back to their procedures, because usually they'd always call out, okay, leader is this car, pace car, please pick up the leader. But they did get it wrong, so definitely need to go back and look at that, because you don't need an error like that surfacing again, because next time it could be a whole big game changer. We've already seen them make some pretty big mistakes and affect some big changes to some pretty serious consequences, and they definitely want to nip that in the bud. Yeah,
for sure. And even, I would say, from a strategy standpoint, I think even before the safety car, it was clear that Lando's tires were doing incredibly well. And the idea here was to run long until he started to either lose time or allow for a safety car, which actually did materialize, which is great for him. But it also meant even without that safety car, he would have been long, and then late in the race, he would have been on the freshest tires. Amazingly, though, his pace never dropped off. No. He was stuck behind Perez, because Perez came dive bombing into turn one. So he dropped back. He was behind Perez. Yep. Didn't have the pace to get around that Red Bull down the straights. The Red Bulls were wickedly fast down the straights. But once Perez boxed and got out of the way, Lando went to work. And from that moment on, he was driving brilliantly. His tires never really lost pace. He had great pace, hunted down Carlos Sainz. And I think that was the key moment from Perez boxing until that safety car. That was when Lando executed perfectly. Yeah, you make your own luck. He stayed out late and he just lucked in. Well, no, he stayed out late because he had the pace. And they'd engineered the car to make those mediums last, and they got their head around the tire and the track and everything. So they earned the opportunity. That's, in sports car racing, we try to do that all the time, because they're longer races and a lot more scenarios that come into play. So deal with that on a daily basis. So yeah, they earned their own luck. They got the clean air. He put the power down. He closed the gaps, and when you have pace, that's helpful, right? It opens some options up, even if things go a little bit awry. But ultimately, everything went perfect for them, and that's great. But even if it hadn't, they still were there. So I think they earned the right. And who knows how long those mediums could have got? A few other teams got the mediums right. A few other teams really struggled. Some teams, I think, changed just for the sake of changing to some degree. Yeah. Trying to play
how the race was going and got it a bit wrong.
Yeah, I think so too. His first win in F1, a huge moment for him, and a bit of a testament to what the paddock thinks of Lando. I'd say arguably one of the most popular drivers in the grid.
Yeah.
And all of the other drivers like Fernando and Carlos and Ricardo and Max, Lewis, they all came up and congratulated him. They were all George Russell. They were all super happy for him.
Yeah, yeah. And these are guys he's been racing against since they were karts. It still amazes to me when you see those pictures of Leclerc and Russell and Norris all standing next to each other, little 8-year-old kids, and all of them made it. What a field they must have been having out there in the kart racing. But yeah, a lot of those guys, they're teammates, not just rivals. They've been teammates, and we know your teammate is your bitterest rival most of the time. So it really does say something about Lando as a person that all those people would come up and be really super happy for him. We see personas in interviews and things like that. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We know a few things that go on behind the scenes that, isn't necessarily things we want to see. But with Lando, it seems, he plays it straight and he is who he is. And, all the better for it, right?
Yeah. There's a few drivers on that grid that if they got their first win, I don't think you'd see all the accolades from other drivers. But Lando is certainly right. He's as big on charm as he is talent. So good on him. Yeah, super. Yeah, excited
absolutely. Super happy for him. He was
very happy for Zach, that entire team who have done a Herculean effort under a cost cap, I might add. Bringing that massive upgrade late last year, continuing that momentum. I guess the big question now, Paul, is this upgrade package, has it put the cat amongst the pigeons with Red Bull and Ferrari?
Yeah.
Or is this just a track-specific, one-off? And that's the big question.
Yeah, I would say it's a bit of both. Mm-hmm. It's that, because we saw how the Red Bull was kind of not really getting away with anything this weekend, even compared to Ferrari. Yeah. Even if McLaren hadn't turned it on, Ferrari were fairly close most of the race.
That's true.
The McLaren was definitely better than Ferrari, but I think.
But Max only had pole by under a tenth.
Yeah. I mean, but sometimes they don't necessarily win pole by a lot because they focus on their race pace and their race setup and everything because they don't need to. But I think here they really were doing everything they could, and it wasn't enough. So I think it definitely track specific with the tire and the track. But I definitely think McLaren also made a lot of gains, and I think it's still showing that they're closing in on Red Bull. Whether they're there yet or not, or be there every week, we don't know, but definitely closing in.
Yeah, and spare a thought for Toto. His Mercedes engine just won the race. In a different car, though. Which is tough. Oscar Piastri, it's hard to. He ends up down at P13, but it's hard to take the stuffing out of him. I mean, he looked like early in the race he was going to be the highest placing McLaren. He gained 3 places at turn 1 with the Perez torpedo. He got hobbled by the safety car, though. That did not help him out. And that's unfortunate because he looked like he was going to be a very high-placing McLaren as well. I think he would have been possible podium as well. Once he lost ground behind that safety car, then he got into his tangle with Carlos. And that created a lot of friction. He ends up touching the back of Carlos's car. Carlos got a penalty for it, but ended up hitting the back of the car, damaged his front wing, had to box for a new front wing, came back out towards midfield, was able to claw back to P13. I don't think you can take much away from him because I think he looked pretty damn good early on.
He did. He looked great, actually. Yeah, he looked really good. Had the pace, and as said, they're keeping everyone honest, quite honestly, at the front. Yeah. So it was, and especially if that car isn't a complete package yet. I was surprised they brought him in with that damage, but I guess they know better than I do how much damage and how much pace he was going to lose with that damage. But I didn't see any way forward with coming in and changing that wing. But as said, maybe it was a pretty bad damage, and he was going to just go backwards anyway, and better to fit a new wing, and maybe there's another safety car and he can make some gains. I don't know, but it didn't seem like the best move in the world. But I can't. Without the data, it's hard to know.
Yeah.
And with the incident, I don't know. Do you think Carlos should get a penalty? I mean, I don't. I think
I don't.
That they're hot. Things happen when you run in side by side in corners. It's not egregious. He comes in, loses the back end a little bit. They're both fighting for a. I don't like penalties like that. I mean, there's things when people punt you or dive inside you at the last second. I think when you're fighting for a corner, we want to see that, and it's really hard to call a blame factor on Carlos for that, other than trying to be a competitive guy and trying to finish as high as he can. I don't think it was anything egregious. So I didn't like it.
No, I didn't either. And you can, I don't know, you can call me names, but I'm kind of like Lewis. I like hard racing. And I when I get to Kevin and Haas, I'll talk about it there in more detail. But they got that call wrong. I think they this micromanaging a race. I'm over it. It's been going on now for several years, and I'm so over micromanaging the races. Let them race. If one's getting aggressive, shortcuts came, then black and white flag them. Warn them. If they keep doing it, park them. Right? Yeah. But let's get back to racing. I mean, at this point, they would have incarcerated Gilles Villeneuve and
yes.
Arnoux,
Absolutely, yeah.
And yet that was one of the most exciting battles in F1 history, right? Yeah. So it frustrates me to no end. But that's just me. Let's talk about Red Bull. You had Sergio Perez in P4, Max in P2. Max was struggling this weekend with grip and balance, and he even was surprised when he got pole. Because he knows he was struggling with that car, and he said, "Gosh, what happened to the other cars?" He really didn't think he was going to have pole position.
Yeah.
And so that was difficult. Those issues revealed themselves once Lando took the lead and got that free pit stop. You could tell, Max just couldn't rotate that car. He was vulnerable out there and a bit exposed. And typically, the main issue was he wasn't able to rotate the car. The front end wasn't as pointy as he typically likes it.
Yeah.
And he was complaining about that. Now, he didn't help matters much by running over the bollard, which was ill-placed. And after the race, he said that the team discovered that there was a hole in the floor. They were thinking maybe that may have caused it and cost him a little time, finishing almost 8 seconds behind Lando.
That would make sense.
Yeah, Max didn't benefit from the safety car, just didn't have the pace to take the battle back to Lando. And although he wasn't happy with his P2 performance, he was very happy and very magnanimous about Lando. It was
sure
his buddy.
Was.
And he was very happy. He said, I'm elated that he won, which was great. But all that being said, Paul, that car, typically Max is the type of driver. I got to be honest, I was watching the onboards during qualifying and the ghost car that Ant Davison did with Max and Charles Leclerc. And Max is just driving at a whole different level. You can argue it's the Red Bull car, but Perez has the same car. Max is just driving at a different level. And I was a little surprised that during the race he couldn't find a way around whatever issue he was having with that car, because that's typically what you see Max do, Yeah. And so it was a little surprising, but it just tells you that Red Bull was struggling here.
Yeah, I mean, but from what he was talking about, it sounds like what we usually do in debriefs, like the car's on top of the surface rather than pushing down in the surface. Not just the front end wasn't working, the rear end wasn't working either.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. So he's just kind of can't get the car to manipulate quickly either way, and that's difficult to get his.
And if
the
it
car
isn't,
just,
Paul, then you're waiting on every corner.
Yeah, and you just don't. It's not going to transition well. It's not going to turn in well. It's not going to accelerate off the corners well because it's sitting on top rather than digging in. And not fun car to drive when they're feeling like that. Quite honestly, you feel a little detached from everything. Ultimately, you want to feel like that car is trying to dig a hole into the ground when you're driving, right? And then even if it's got a little understeer that you wouldn't like, you can still change and manhandle the car a little bit to make it pointy with different things, with what you're doing with the brake and everything. But if the car really is just kind of on the surface, there's nothing you can do with transitioning the weight because there's nothing digging into the surface to kind of bite into.
Just no
that
bite.
Makes any sense at all. But
it does.
Kind of,
if you don't have bite into that corner, and that confidence that you've got that bite that you can rotate that car and lean on it hard, then it's a waiting game and waiting for every corner to develop and that's got to be maddening. And I remember, you've talked about in the past, about understeer and some of the drivers prefer a little understeer, whereas like Max, Vettel, Lewis, Fernando, they all like a very pointy front end,
right?
Because they don't like waiting on it to finally grip up and turn in. They hate that,
like my first ever coach, Pete Argetinger, R.I.P. Pete, but he was just saying. He was like, I'm not going to wait for the oversteer to happen. I'm going to make it happen so I don't have to think about it anymore and just get in it, which is a great point. It's like, you just chuck it in and then, okay, here we go. Yeah. But rather than like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Oh, there it is. Make it happen and then get on with the job on the exit. Yeah.
Right.
That's what those guys do. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not what Sergio did. He had a serious lockup in turn one. I guess, he had that clear shot all the way down the inside, but it almost seemed like the corners crept up on him and surprised him, or just locked up and slid through, narrowly missing his teammate Max, and took everybody with him off the side.
Well, I'll tell you one thing: if he was going to hit anyone, it's going to be everyone else but Max.
Right. He's locked up.
It's like, left. Sorry, everybody, but I'm not taking that guy. I'm still trying to get a ride for next year.
I'll hit all these other dudes, but not that guy.
Not that guy.
So he's unfortunate. He struggled this weekend too. He boxed twice for then hard and then medium, and said that it was interesting. He said he really struggled on the mediums, and said that they made changes overnight. He said that clearly come Sunday that they just kind of went down a wrong direction for him and it didn't work for him. He's surprised there was a lack of grip in turn one. That caught him off guard and he ran deep in and nearly took everybody out. But bit of a Grosjean moment, but fortunately avoided everybody and everybody avoided him.
Yeah, very fortunate. Yeah, not the best weekend for Sergio. But once again, we're leading into the how the car was working on the tire, being on the surf. It's like maybe it's tough for them to get temperature in the tire if the car's not working itself into the asphalt. So maybe a bit off there. I don't think it was a bit of a mistake, but not a lot of a mistake. But the consequences of turn one at that point are dire, right? So little lockups makes a big difference when there's 5 cars within a couple of meters of you.
Yeah, it sure does. And I think clearly this track does not flatter the Red Bull chassis, period.
Yeah.
So I think that's the conclusion can draw. I think we'll see a different Red Bull at Imola in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, P2, Carlos Sainz, P5. Charles struggled early in the weekend, but did better in the sprint and the actual race. Charles said that he was lucky to survive turn one and then engaged in tire management after that and stopped early. So the virtual safety car and safety car cost him. They were on older tires late in the race. So P2 is a good result. They were able to do some undercut during their box strategy. But I would say in
P3,
Charles,
you mean, right?
Yes. Sorry,
Yes.
P3.
I didn't want you to get hundreds of emails.
I would too. Every time I'm wrong, everybody keeps me frosty. So a P3 result, good result for Ferrari. I don't think Ferrari looked horrible this weekend. I think in Charles's hands, he had that spin early on the weekend, but really came back on the sprint, looked good, finishing well in the sprint, great points haul, weren't miles away from the Red Bull. I would say that given that McLaren won, I think the opportunity was possibly there for Ferrari. Maybe they were struggling a little bit on this track too, like Red Bull was, but it didn't happen for Charles. But not a bad race for him.
No, it's okay. I think Ferrari didn't seem very disappointed after the race. I think they came away with it. I mean, the thing about McLaren is it's inspiration for everyone to know that things are possible, right? And Ferrari, we know, have done a pretty good job and are as close as anyone could get to Red Bull. And, a few adjustments here and clicks there, they could be doing the same thing that McLaren's doing at some of these races. Without McLaren there, it would have been a Ferrari versus Red Bull again, right? So I think they're doing a good job. I think Charles was managing his tires there that first stint, and Sainz was like, I think I have pace on him. But then we saw, as the stint went on, that then Charles could then pull away from Carlos. So there's always tires management going on there. So it's funny when people start squawking about pace and everything. It's like, we're not switching positions, Carlos. Come on now. Don't be silly.
Charles is driving to a Delta for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Carlos got pushed wide at turn 1, lost 2 spots. He clawed the back, got frustrated with Oscar, and eventually clashed with the Aussie, which garnered a post-race penalty, dropping him to 5th, even though he finished 4th on the track. If I'm honest, it was a little bit of a ragged race for Carlos, given recent form. I think he's looked stellar. But be fair to him, he boxed 1 lap before the safety car, and had they waited, he felt like he would have been in the mix to win the race. And so he said, we boxed a lap before the safety car, and had that not happened, he felt a win was on. Still, as I said, big picture is both Ferraris in the points. That's great for their battle against Mercedes and McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. They finished 2 Ferraris. Yes, there was a McLaren ahead of him, but there was 2 Ferraris ahead of Oscar. So, and in the points, so that was good. Not a bad weekend for them, and it was great to see Fred Vasseur over at the McLaren in the paddock, celebrating and spraying the whole team with champagne. They had the whole team picture up there. And everybody was in McLaren, and they're all there getting pictures. And Fred was in the audience. And right after the pictures, he comes running in with a bottle of champagne sprayed everywhere. Just great to see that camaraderie. And that is not what you would have seen from a former Ferrari team boss. Trust me.
No, as I said, that's what I'm saying. McLaren, it's like an inspiration. It's like everyone against Red Bull. Can someone beat them? Right. It's like, we did it. We all did it. Yeah. You be telling them. Carlos was pretty funny on the radio, I thought. You be telling McLaren what to do. You be telling them to let me buy. Yeah, you be telling them.
Leave me alone, Ricky. He was not happy.
Ricky, you be telling them.
He was not a happy Spaniard.
No, but sure. As you said, one lap different pit stop time could have changed his whole race, but he was a little ragged. But it was a feisty race, quite honestly. I don't think he was rough. I think it was just a feisty race. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of passing going on. It was an enjoyable race to watch for sure. All the way down the field, all the way down there, we saw a lot of to and froing, and Carlos was obviously in the mix quite a bit in the highlight reel. So. Yeah,
and kudos to Miami, because I'm not a big fan of racing around parking lots.
Yeah,
but they've done a lot of work on this track, and it is producing some really good racing. So I eat crow on that. I think it was a good race.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it with Vegas. It's like not always the most interesting track. Can actually make better racing on the track. Yeah, right? You got better tracks that are just phenomenal to drive, like Spa and Monaco and things like that. Doesn't necessarily make for an exciting race, but sometimes a simplified track where everyone's a little close, and I think the field was pretty tight, right? That it kind of leads to pushing everyone together, and that leads to some good fighting. I think the Miami fans should have been very happy with what they were watching out there. I certainly did enjoy the race when I finally got to see it, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton P6, George Russell P8. Weekend started rough for both of them, but I will say that Lewis recovered, I think, really well come Sunday with a very good drive to P6, despite having a Haas car in his grill all weekend long. I mean,
Yes.
it's like a bad piece of gum on the bottom of his shoe. He just couldn't get the Haas off of him, shaking it, you know.
How many cars did they end up for this race?
I
Crying
know,
out
there must
loud.
have been 20 Haas's in that race.
Is Gunther in
God.
this car? He's driving like it.
Every time he passed a Haas, he had another Haas in front of him. It's poor Lewis. Good grief. Lewis was digging really deep this weekend, trying to deliver out of that car. Was able to overcome some of the inconsistencies in this car is what, I mean, from a driver perspective, be driving you mad. You know, they never know what's going to show up out of the box, you know, and that inconsistency, he was able to drive through that and have a march forward to P6, was even trying to battle Sergio. He only finished a second behind Sergio.
Yeah.
Was on the radio asking for more power, different settings to take the fight to Sergio. Didn't materialize, but still, given what I saw, from the onboards from Lewis, I think a P6 is a damn good finish.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, he was feisty. He was on it. He was probably.
Yeah.
I guess the car was giving him some decent feedback to get into it, even if the car isn't as fast as a couple of the other cars on there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes it's nice to get a little grit your teeth and just start throwing a car around, which you kind of did.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Haas thing was just hilarious.
It was
Just-
funny.
it
But
was
Lewis
like-
said he loved it. He goes, I love
Did
hard
he? Yeah.
racing. Yeah, he said, it was fun with Kevin. I love hard racing, and
Oh.
I enjoyed it, you know.
Good for him then.
And people said, well, he was complaining on the radio. Well, of course he's going to complain.
Yeah.
Every driver is going to complain like that to try to get an advantage and get
Right,
the race stewards to
that's
do
what you
something.
do.
That's what you do. But he enjoyed it. He loved the hard racing. George, on the other hand, said there was something off with his car. The speed just wasn't there for him. And he started on used mediums, so that was a bit difficult, while Lewis was on new hards. And when they switched to the hards, he said he had no pace on the hards. The battles with Hülkenberg cost really both drivers a lot of time, and both missed out on benefiting from the safety car. So they boxed before it came out, so they didn't get that benefit, unfortunately. Ultimately, the team said they were really struggling on the slow corners. And you could certainly see that on Lewis's onboards. I mean, he was battling that car, and it was in those corners, constantly catching it or fighting balance issues for most of the weekend. And George just said they need to go back and figure out, because his pace just evaporated compared to Lewis. He just wasn't there.
Yeah. It was very, very mediocre George weekend.
Yeah.
But you know, the car isn't great, and I think hasn't that been the whole thing? The whole year has been slow to slow medium turns has been their thorn in their side. So yeah, they definitely do need to get some work on that mechanical grip rather than just make it an aero car or something like that. But yeah,
I agree with George. The team needs some perspective on the slow corner. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're smart men and women over there. Surely they'll figure it out. But yeah, tough.
Yeah.
RB, Daniel Ricciardo P15, Yuki Tsunoda P7. Yuki had a great race. Had the same strategy as Lando and executed it like Lando did. Benefited from the safety car, moved him up to P7. Yuki said he said he made a mistake at the start, but then he said, I recovered very well and executed the strategy perfectly. Well done, Yuki.
Yeah.
If you can't be your own fan, Yuki, you know, who's going to be, right?
Well, I think he
he's
knows
right.
how
He did.
much crap he's been given, certainly from me.
Yeah,
And
right.
And I think there's been a very big push to change Yuki. I mean, I've seen him in
agree.
interviews and things like that, and how he talks about his team, and he's getting a
It's
lot
a
more
kinder,
polished.
gentler Yuki.
Yeah, I think there's still a Yuki boiling under there, quite
I do
honestly.
too.
But
There's
I
an
think
undertow.
I think he knows that it's a very critical time in his career,
It is.
and he's turning up the pace a little bit, consistent pace, and he's behaving so over the microphone and in his comments and things like that. So I think he knows what could potentially be up for grabs, or what he could potentially lose forever, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think he's
Somebody
doing a good
told
job.
him that this kind of F-bombing, tirade and stuff ain't ever going to work at Red Bull.
So that is definitely
if you
been going
want the
on.
Red Bull seat, you got to stop that crap out right now.
Or you want to see it at all, quite honestly. You want to see it all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with Red Bull and VCarb or whatever they're called, they've got a few drivers in the pool that aren't even on the roster yet. You got Liam, you've got
Liam.
Carlos Sainz, could be a number 2 to Verstappen, and then who goes where, right? So I think they're definitely having to fight it out for their careers at this point. But he's doing a good job in doing that. So I do beat on Yuki, but I think I gave him drive the race a couple of races ago. So
you did.
Maybe I'm softening up on the wee fella.
This is the happy fun Yuki. Dan, on the other hand, had a great sprint, scored great points in the sprint. I was super excited to see Dan kind of recover, find his mojo, qualified for the sprint well, ends up doing well in the sprint, great points haul in the sprint. And I thought, all right, let's just replicate that on Sunday. And that's what he wanted to. He was definitely looking for a points haul on Sunday. Unfortunately, he was stuck in traffic for most of the race. He said he just didn't have the pace. And he said, I didn't have any of the pace I had when I was in clean air in the sprint race. Yeah. And because of all that traffic lock.
But he also had a bad qualifying, and then he had a penalty.
Qualifying and the penalty, and that's why he was back there. And, had he qualified better for the race, may have been a different result.
Exactly.
But, but in the end, they pocketed 12 total points out of this weekend between Dan's Saturday performance and Yuki's Sunday. Good points haul for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. They turned it around, but Ricciardo still, as I said, with Ricciardo, it's like you can have those sprint races, but you got to be consistent and just, that qualifying just didn't. That's difficult. It's difficult to come back through there. You're not in a car that's superior that you can fight your way through, 3-4 sets of manufacturers. So
the qualifying,
unlikely you're going to make it out. Yeah,
it's always going to put you on the back foot.
Yep.
Aston Martin, Lance Stroll P17, Fernando Alonso P9. Fernando benefited from the safety car, and despite a rough Saturday, he was able to claw some points out of the weekend on Sunday. Fernando said that he had more pace than quali during the race, and when he boxed during the safety car, it changed their strategy a bit and allowed them to fight for a top 10 of the points, which he did. Good to see Fernando do that. Fernando, a little grumpy this weekend, not happy with the lack of penalties for Lewis Hamilton on the sprint race. Went and saw the FIA and said, I think, is there a nationality thing going on here? Because the Spanish drivers get constant penalties and the British drivers don't. So what's going on here? Shocking. It's a great sport. I don't know. You gotta love it when Fernando, when he feels aggrieved, man, he has got that huge stick out and starts stirring that pot.
Oh man, he knows exactly the right words to use too, right?
Does. He pushes awesome. All the buttons.
Yeah.
But I would say on balance, not a great weekend for him, but a better Sunday than Saturday, that's for sure.
Yep, that's what you can say. It was a war out there. It was really tight in the midfield, but to even get points when the car was kind of was okay.
Lance said it wasn't a great day. He stopped early trying to undercut Yuki, but in the end missed out on the safety car because of that, lost places, sent him towards the back. He said the safety car really hobbled his strategy, and even though he crossed the finish line in P13, he got a penalty for passing Albon and going off track, so that dropped him back down to P15. So
there you go.
So there you go. It's a whole different category, Lance. Let's see. Alpine, Pierre Gasly. What is that? P13, Esteban Ocon, P10.
The dueling Alpines.
Yeah, right. Despite battling each other in the opening laps, going too wide through like every corner for the first half of the track.
That's nuts.
They kept their heads, though. Fair enough racing, kept their heads, and they were able to bring Esteban home in P10 for the team's very first point of the season.
Woo.
Yeah, the team split the strategy of Pierre trying to undercut boxing early and then Esteban running long. Esteban said that it was important that the team show progress and that they're moving in the right direction. They feel that they are moving in the right direction over the last couple of races anyway, and scoring a point is good. They're proud. He said he's proud of the team for not just raising their hands and giving up. And so that's good. Good to see Esteban in the points, Paul.
Yep. It was, they got in the points, but I mean, they definitely made progress. I mean, they were
lighter car.
Awful. So I don't know what they're doing, if they're just gradually shaving bits off the car to save the weight or something like that. But obviously, it's a tough haul for them with the least amount of power on from the engine on the grid, and then a heavy car. That was awful.
That was a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, to come back gradually, but as we've always said, it's a factory team. You shouldn't even be down here in the first place.
Yes, yeah. Pierre said he actually had a good race despite no points, said that he had good pace. The virtual safety car and safety car didn't help him. Obviously, he boxed early trying to undercut Yuki, so he got caught out by that. He said the most important thing is the team's point. You know, we get a point, we're moving in the right direction. Instead of being in last on the grid, we're up in top 10. That's good. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I would agree with him.
And we're getting along famously.
And we're like this. We're buddies. We're pals. Yes. Yeah. Let's see. Haas F1, all 20 of them. Hulkenberg had a P11, Kevin Magnussen a P18. Nico had a very good Saturday in the points, assisted by his teammate, and said he wanted another points finish, but said he was struggling for grip for the entire first stint and the first part of the second stint. He said the virtual safety car hurt, and then when the safety car came out, it moved them to a 3-stopper and at the back, but he was able to claw his way all the way back to P11, narrowly missed out on points. I mean, he was like, a second or so away from it. I would say on balance, I mean, look, not in the points for him, but he was in the points on Saturday. I'd say it was a good weekend for Nico.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a good weekend for the team. And I think, obviously, Hulkenberg's historically has been getting the results that Magnussen can't get, and which is why he's getting another chance at the factory ride, right? But he's doing a great job. I mean, I think the team is doing a great job to even give him a shot at it. I mean, they've been a bit of a joke over the past 2 seasons of just pacing the qualifying and going backwards, but they've really sorted it out. And I don't know what the magic dust is, but they really have sorted it out, and he's always got a chance.
I'll tell you what the magic is. 2 years ago, I said they needed to replace Gunther, and they did. Finally, 2 years late, but they did. I got nothing against Gunther. He's a nice guy and all, but sometimes if the team isn't executing, you can't fire the whole team. You got to fire the coach, and that's what they did. I think, and I was watching him. You're right. It's not only is the car doing all right, Nico's performing well, the strategies have been good, the pit stops have been good. They're executing well. It was a good weekend for the team, and so far on balance, it's a good start to the year for them. I just hope they can develop.
It's a good vibe in the team, and the drivers work together. And who would thought Magnussen would work as a team player rather than just for his own individual glory? It's not really in his wheelhouse, but
it's exactly right. I was a little surprised he was such the team player. Kevin had a tough weekend, and while I think the stewards were a little off on Saturday, if I'm honest, I posted this. It should have been a warning for the first offense, a black and white for the second, and a penalty for the third offense. Instead they came out immediately. He and Lewis were fighting. He ended up bailing out of the corner, went across the chicane. They should have warned him, gave the place back, and moved on. But no, they immediately come out with a 10-second penalty for that.
Right.
Well,
but he doesn't have to get out of the way.
Then he doesn't have to get out of the way. Oh, well, I got the penalty. Well, the hell with it. I'm going to hold him up more to ensure that Nico gets a clean run.
That's what you got to do.
Why would they? Yeah, come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, he's driving to the rules that are there, and they as every race team tries to do anyway. You use the rules to get as big any advantage you can, and with this, it was a bit bizarre that he was using the rules to get penalties to hold people back, but not actually, and still be able to keep manipulating the traffic behind him, because the penalty didn't really matter in the end at that point, certainly in the sprint race, right? So the stewards need to have a rethink of how and what penalties they institute in certain situations. If they really wanted Magnussen out of the way, then give him a drive-through, or as you say, tell him to give Lewis the place, something. But just giving them a second penalty when they're not in the points anyway, and he's got the potential of still holding up everybody for his team's benefit, he's going to do it. The team's going to ask him to do it. And the rules have to change that process rather than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. And when they came out immediately, they're just hard racing with Lewis. It was actually very fun to watch.
Yeah, it was a bit Lewis cheeky for sure. I mean, it's very cheeky, but
yeah, it was, and I think he was moving under braking a little bit. He was desperately trying to keep Lewis behind him. Yeah, running wide at the first chicane. Look, it happens. It's good racing. They should have just told the team to give the position to Lewis and been done with it. But no, they immediately give a 10-second penalty. Then it's game on, like you said. Then it doesn't matter at that point. He's going to do anything. And then it's a black and white flag for the second, and then another penalty, and then another. And I got to be honest with you, I was a little surprised he was so candid in the press after the race, saying that he agreed he deserved the penalties and his driving was silly, but he was just doing the team game.
Yeah.
So then the stewards, feeling like they just had pie thrown in their face with him admitting it so publicly, well, they couldn't just do nothing, so they haul him before him and then have this whole unsportsman conduct, discussion with him, and all of a sudden it turns into a witch hunt on Kevin, and then. I agree. You can go too far, and Kevin did on certain occasions this weekend. But it was in executing the rules as they're stated, and trying to run the team game. And then his incident during the race, he stuck it in there. Should have bailed out of the corner, but everybody after the race said, well, there was plenty of room for him to avoid hitting Logan if he would just ran and shortcutted the corner. Yeah. Well, hell, he just got a penalty for it the day before, so he wasn't about to run off the corner.
I think, there's a situation there. I don't think he was right keeping his nose there, because it was obvious. Like, that corner, maybe Logan could have seen him, maybe he could have given him room, but ultimately, I think if he'd run to the inside to avoid contact, I don't think he would have had a penalty, but it was a bit of a 50-50 shot, honestly.
Probably should have checked up.
He should have checked up, but and Logan could have given room, but as we know, you're driving the fastest race car in the world. You kind of have to look ahead rather than be looking behind you. It's one thing driving down the highway at 55, checking your mirrors, which no one does anyway, but it's very hard to do when you're trying to be millimeter perfect on getting to the corner. So I don't really blame Logan for it. I do blame Kevin more. Kevin did have another option, really. But if Logan had given him more, honestly, Logan would have been on so much crap out there, he probably would have lost it anyway. So
yeah. Well, when you're going through a chicane like that at 60 miles an hour, you kind of have to look for the apex.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Not look for Kevin dive bombing on the inside.
I mean, there's a time where you feel awareness, but I don't blame Logan, really. It's just,
no, I don't either. I think it was on Kevin, and Kevin should have checked up or bailed out of it.
Yeah, but I tell you what, anyone in that field, they don't want to mess with the Haas boys. It's like, who's coming into town now? It's the Haas boys. Holy moly. Quit. Hide the women. Hide the children.
I know.
God knows what they're going to do next.
I know. Keith and Lizzie, the boys are back. Man. It was crazy. Kevin is, I feel for him. I like Kevin Magnussen, and I like that he is a handful to get around. He's just aggressive, and I like that about him. But he said he looked pretty despondent in the pen after the race, and they asked him about it. He goes, "I Is a bad weekend.
He's just been browbeaten the whole week.
He is.
You know,
he got beat up the whole weekend.
He did.
You know, and to be honest with you, some of that's on him, but I don't think all of it was. I think it turned into a bit of a witch hunt.
Yeah, he'll brush it off.
But anyway, he's a Dane. He'll brush it off. He said that he hoped he could gain some clarity from this weekend and move on. Good on him.
After a couple of shots of tequila. Cinco de Mayo, boys. Yeah.
Yes. So, kick Sauber kick. Valtteri Bottas, P16, Joe Guan Yu, P14. Joe said they tried everything they could. He was stuck behind Albon and he couldn't match the straight line speed of the Williams. Even with DRS, he couldn't get past. It was a bit odd, though, because they changed them as softs, and then when they changed tires, they were going to try to run him the whole rest of the race on that. I don't know what they're doing. This team, honestly. Yeah, that was never going to work. Yeah, this team is a bit of a weird one for me. Doesn't achieve very much. You're kind of like, Audi. Yeah, or Audi just not even showing up. They're just. I don't know. Yeah, it's like you're not moved in yet, so we're like, well, I don't know what's going on over there. We'll check in. But hopefully this is. I thought they would have been loitering around the garage, saying, "Hey, you might want to try this or that." Yeah. Is it a case that Audi's not there, and then like magically in 2026, all these black cars and SUVs show up, and all these people get out and come in and bum rush everybody in the factory? Right. What does that look like? I don't know. It doesn't seem there's a lot of Audi influence on this team right now. They just kind of left them on their own. Yeah. It's like, we're using this budget to build our nice new wind tunnel and surroundings for next year. So you guys just play in the sand over here and we'll get back to you at the end of the year. By the way, none of you are going to be here next year. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No mullets either. All right. The mullet killed it. Yeah. So it was all fun and games, Valtteri, until the mullet. All right. Yeah. Well, the Germans do like a good mullet. I'll tell you. Mullet. Yeah. I saw something on TikTok the other day. It's so true. It said, and talking about it here in America, it's sort of a trend with all these young teenage boys, early 20s. And so he said, why are all the young men walking around looking like alpacas? That's true. Anyway, I can't complain. I don't have hair, so there you go. Valtteri said the safety car cost him, and they were trying a different strategy than Joe. He said they just didn't have the pace and that they thought that they would in Miami. So their expectations were not right-sized heading into this weekend, apparently. It comes down to correlation data, I think. But hopefully Bottas got some good video of him jumping around the beats in short shorts or nothing, or whatever the hell he did. Shots on the beach, for his next year's butt calendar. I'm sure you got a copy hanging on your wall back there somewhere. Absolutely. Yeah. Who doesn't want to wake up to Valtteri Bottas' butt? So anyway, all right. Down to Williams, are we? Yes, we are. We're down to Williams. Claire Williams, I think, was there, Paul. Oh, yeah? Good to see her in the back of the garage. It could have only been better if they found Patty Lowe. And Patty Lowe, sit next to her for the race. Yeah. That would have been great. Yeah. Hello, Patty. Hello, Claire. Hello. So I got some pots for you. Okay. That's just nice. Leave them on the table. Yeah, so cool. Well, I guess Claire walks in and say, "Well, I guess nothing's changed." Yeah, you're still last. I remember. Yeah, see, it wasn't all my fault. Yeah. Oh, James Vowles, better team principal. Okay, you're still running last. Anyway, good to see Claire there. Williams, Alex Albon, P12, Logan, Sargeant, DNF. Was he classified P17? Maybe he was. I don't know. I can't remember. Alex said they were struggling for grip all weekend long. Said on Saturday that his tires were good for about 6 corners and they were done. That's how bad it was on Saturday. And they had, and that was in Q2. That wasn't when they were the qualifying sprint where they had to use the soft either. But he said it was one of the most difficult races he's had in his career so far. And he also said that he had floor damage after the race. They discovered that too, so that wasn't good. The safety car from Logan's incident came at the absolute wrong time for Alex. Didn't help him out. And again, Logan's race, as we mentioned, was compromised. He had that collision with Kevin in his home race. He wanted to do well. I would say, actually, on balance, he was actually doing well this weekend.
I think he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was holding his own. I mean,
He was. Yeah, he was right. He was thereabouts with Alex all weekend long. Out-qualified him.
Yeah, which is difficult,
Yeah,
Alex is a heck of a driver, but it's difficult for anyone to see that progress if the car's floundering at the back anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, you're 17th. Well done, sir. It's like, But it's probably the hardest lap he's ever driven, throwing everything out there, just to be ahead of his teammates somehow.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, all right. Shall we do some awards?
let's do it.
Let's do it. Move the race. Woohoo!
Seriously, Todd.
Yes. Seriously, we're going to do move the race.
Yeah.
Who'd you have?
Well,
We had the same thing.
Yeah, we did have the same things. Really, the tactics on McLaren and the ability to use that tactic, but holding Lando out there for that long, not hair triggering reactions to things, and just having a good plan and knowing exactly what they had, and that obviously, as I said, that long run on those mediums gave them massive opportunity, and they jumped on it.
Yeah, I agree. Whether this track just flattered their chassis and didn't Red Bull or not, doesn't really matter. I think what McLaren has done is shown up with this massive upgrade package, done it in a cost cap, methodically moved. Yeah, the men and women of Woking should be incredibly proud of what they've pulled off. And then, they come to race day. Oscar looks fantastic first half of the race. The strategy, everything was executed perfectly by Lando, who never complained about his tires. They would talk to me because the tires are fine. Let's stay out. He was going.
Keep going.
Just pure joy to see that. And I'm, from a Ferrari fan, they beat my team, but I'm elated for them. I think they're fabulous.
As I said, that was great. And so that was a great move to call that strategy. It worked out. But there were some great tussles and great passes in the race. There was numerous ones, actually. I mean, most of them DRS assisted, but some, people had to, you had to be assertive to make a pass there for sure. And I think drivers did a good job in having good dices, being assertive, but not just clouting every single wall that was out there, which was numerous.
And I think I heard them say it was a 20 or 21st British driver to win a race.
Oh,
how about that?
There we go. Well done.
I'll be honest, you would have been 20th, 21st, 18th, whatever, if they had just handed you the keys.
Yeah, and no one else had finished the race.
You'd have done a Magnussen on everybody. Oh, good. All right, let's talk donkey of the race.
We'll do it live. Get down.
All right, Paul, donkey of the race. Who you got?
All right. Well, I could have called the FIA for their safety car thing, but luckily we'll blow that over. We'll just pretend that didn't happen, just sort it out. But I'm going to pick the bollard that Max Verstappen whacked. Can we not just bring in some cones from the construction on I-95 and actually figure something out? If you tap it, it's not going to just bring out a full course yellow. We've got to be better than this, right? Don't you think? We've got to be a bit more inventive, can we?
Yeah, it's almost like there's going to be this quarter. What do we? Here, we got the sawhorse here. Here, we don't put that there? No, here, grab that cone off at the highway.
Yeah,
put that
clean that up a little bit. It's still got some gunk on it,
Yeah. Do they not make a little, I don't know. Surely
let's just
there's
rethink
an
that
opportunity
process.
for the people that make crap for racetracks, you know, whoever that is. Who is the company that... There's companies out there. That's what they do.
Tech Pro, you mean? Or
Tech Pro and others that make crap for racing.
There's probably something on Uline you can order that could probably...
Or Granger, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, All right. That's a good shout. I am going to give it a little joint. Stewards and Kevin. I think Kevin kind of architected himself into the villain position a little this weekend. So he's guilty of that. Probably could have dialed it down a little and still achieved the same result. Anyway, his angry Dane routine. And so there you have that. But I think the stewards were ham-fisted this weekend.
Was your buddy Derek Warwick steward again this weekend?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
But Vito Antonio Liuzzi was.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, there's your problem.
There's your problem.
I didn't get my full chance in F1, and by God, I'm going to screw these guys. So anyway, there was that. The safety car picking up Max and not the leader. I'm a little surprised the F1 TV coverage said, well, it's understandable. Max is usually leading. It's like, no. They have a phalanx of people looking at monitors who know who's leading this race.
Yeah.
Just somebody get on the horn to Burn Mylander and tell him when to pull out.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Burns rip roaring to go down there, All right. Final words is drive of the race. Oh, yeah.
It's in there, Lewis. You like my bass? You like it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole world liked his pace. Not for Sergio's, but our driver of the race for sure.
Flew through that turn one like it wasn't even there. Such is the pace. Yes.
Of the Sergio.
I think this is an obvious one, is it not?
Yeah, it's got to be. Got to be Lando Norris.
Gotta be.
How can it not be?
How can you not like that kid, Paul?
He's
a good kid.
He is. Yeah.
And I was watching him, I hopped over after the race and looked at the onboards and stuff. I mean, he's a hell of a good driver.
Yeah.
He really is, and I'm not taking any way. And we always talk about, I know the press and I know Sky Sports and everyone wants to big up this whole Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen rivalry, but Max is not in Lewis's peer group. Fernando is, those guys, Sergio Perez is, that's Lewis's era. Max, George Russell, Lando, Charles Leclerc, they're all in that same peer group, and I think all of them were genuinely happy for their buddy Lando.
Absolutely. Yeah, he wears his heart in his sleeve.
He does.
Threw a couple of F-bombs out there, which was interesting.
He did. Said the F-bomb live at the podium ceremony.
They didn't even bleep it out, which is...
No. Yeah. And you would think that it might be on broadcast delay.
Usually it's a little delay in there, but good for you. Rock and roll, Lando.
Let that be a lesson to Crofty. No F-bombs, Crofty.
Yeah.
Good to see Ant Davison back. Good to see JB back. Good to see over on the F1 broadcast, Ruth Buscombe.
She does a good job. She knows her stuff.
Yeah, she does know her stuff.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time on that Sauber pit wall.
Yeah, and she was very good when she was there.
She was good.
Even if the Sauber wasn't great, she was usually making some pretty darn good calls. So I like having her on there. She really gets some.
Yeah, I do too.
There's a lot of data out there. When it's one thing if you're managing one team, one thing if you're looking at the big picture of all the teams, and she actually does a great job.
Yeah, when you think of like Hannah at Red Bull doing a fantastic strategy job over there, think of Ruth, who was at Sauber. You think of Bernie Collins. I love having Bernie Collins on Sky's broadcast.
You have to listen a little harder though.
Gotta listen, But you should know that, Paul. You've spent a lot of drunken nights with Tommy Byrne. You ought to.
Yes, I have.
You ought to be able to pick up that Irish pretty well, can't you?
Yeah.
So, So anyway, I love Bernie. She's got the tires nailed. I mean, she's down to the nth degree. So, and Ruth did a great job too. So, kudos to Ruth.
Yep.
To Will and the entire team over there. Great job. All right, let's see. Oh, quick mailbag.
You've got mail.
Mr. Jury asked this, Paul. He says, I get such a kick out of K-Mag, saying, quote, they're going to give you another penalty. Go ahead. I'm out of points now anyways. Question for you folks who've watched a heck of a lot more racing than I have. Is there any solution to the traffic during qualifying? Speaking of K-Mag.
Single lap qualifying.
Single lap qualifying. They used to do that. Back in the day, so you got to go back late 90s, early 2000s. Right?
Yeah. I think that was the solution to it. The other solution is, less cars on track at one time. But I think that the games obviously get a little silly, but when you're starting 20 cars out there trying to get a qualifying lap on a track, it's pretty darn difficult, So unless they start splitting into different groups, so there's only 10 cars on the track at any one time, I don't know. But the ultimate solution is single car qualifying, which a lot of people have never seen, and it was interesting.
Yep,
I would say it was its own thing. I think, when we see Q3, that's probably the best qualifying you're going to see, right? There's enough room on the track. You can keep track of the cars. We're trying to keep track of 20 cars and they're blocking each other and all that stuff. The Q1s are a little difficult to fathom what's going on until after it's already over. But the single qualifying, you could actually absolutely see what's going on.
Yeah.
You could follow one car going around. You could see if it was up or down, and it was all or nothing.
Right.
In those things. That was a different, obviously, approach also for the drivers.
Yeah, it was. The only other thing I was thinking of, you could just pick a time, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, it doesn't really matter. Pick a time, and that's the time for qualifying. Mm-hmm. So all the teams go out, but just know that at the 10-minute mark, we're going to stop. We're going to cut the slowest 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
And at the 20-minute mark, we're going to cut the next chunk, and then by the time it gets down to the end, that's your. But field,
I think they tried that.
Yeah,
and that didn't quite work out. I was talking about that this weekend actually.
Yeah,
they tried that at Australia, and it was a disaster, and I can't remember why now.
But wasn't it because did they have those marks in time where it forced people to get out and run, because if you didn't run in the first 10 minutes, you're getting cut?
It was something weird, and I honestly can't remember. We're gonna have to look back at it. I'm sure some people do remember it more vividly, but also remember the qualifying when you had to run with fuel, and you had to run the fuel you were going to start in. And then we were watching people trundle around for laps, just burning fuel. It was like, this is good for the environment right here. Good job, guys. Keep doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it made them all run, so there was lots of action on the track, but nobody was really going at it.
No, there was cars just running. Fuel. It was like watching people go down the motorway, honestly.
Yeah, right.
Just fuel burning out of the pipes.
Right. Yeah. But Paul's right. Single lap qualifying would be it. And he said, the second question, I'm greedy. There's been a spate of failing to follow race director penalties this year. What does this actually mean?
It's usually just a violation of the penalty. If you've got it was like, was it Alonso got it and got out of it somehow, where you're supposed to follow your 5-second penalty, but they don't follow it and they do it less time, or don't do it in time, and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Or
don't serve the penalty in the right way.
In the right way, whatever that penalty is. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there you go. All right. Well, that does it for the Miami Grand Prix review.
Okay.
How about that? We're at the end.
How about that? Yeah.
So a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this without you. If you like this podcast and if you feel you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that by going to our website, theparkformay.com. Scroll to the bottom. There's a link there, or towards the top on the right-hand side. There's a link that'll take you to Patreon. You can support us over there. And if you do support us on Patreon, you will get a link to join the audience during the recording of these podcasts. So that's a lot of fun. We love doing that with our Patreon supporters and record live and have interactions with them. If you like this podcast, go over to your favorite podcast player and give us some good rating. Give us some love over there. We always appreciate that. You can share your opinion on this podcast at theparkformay.com. A little programming note. Having some work done this weekend on me. So,
is it your cheeks this time, or which?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a lift. I'm trying to get this taken care of.
Yeah,
maybe a hair transplant.
Yeah,
no. But my plan now is to recover and to be right back on the podcast next weekend with Grace. But if it's late, you all will know why. So anyway, just a little programming note. Paul, where do you go next with hard
Next,
racing?
In 2 days, I'm off to Laguna Seca. Yep. So we got IMSA race at Laguna Seca. Then I come home, clean my underwear, and then I head down to Coda for another SRO race. It's a 3-hour race, an endurance race for the SRO grid, the only one
cool.
we really do. So that's exciting.
Cool.
So we're going to do pit stops and refueling and all that stuff in our SRO team. So
Can
hopefully
people follow the SRO at GT World on
GT World, on YouTube. You don't even pay to see it, and just tune in, see when the races are coming up, and they show them live. So it's pretty cool, actually.
And it's cool because it's not like two idiots calling it. You got Calvin Fish there.
Yeah, Calvin. Yeah, he's always in the paddock, and he does a great job. And so
Calvin are buddies, right?
Yeah, we've been buddies for decades. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Yeah.
And so no, it's always good to see Calvin. He does a great job. He's got a lot of insight into it, and there's a lot of racing going on at the SRO. So if you're in the Austin area or whatever, come on by and see us. It's going to be a fun event, and hopefully we can jump from our second place championship positions and make some headway, because we're going to get extra points for the endurance race. So we've got to execute that for sure. But luckily, we've got a wee bit of experience with these longer races. So I'm hoping, we've got a little advantage over some other teams that may be doing one for the first time. Yeah.
That'd be great. Well, excellent. All right, until next week when we come back and do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camper, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
I don't feel I've got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive a certain type of car.